Survivor Series War Games 2025 is officially in the books. And, I sat on this pay per view here for a good half hour here. I didn't really jump on immediately as far as to give you my thoughts because my thoughts after the PLE came off the air versus my thoughts now are kind of a little different because this PLE in itself, this I don't really know what to call this because I'm just gonna call it mid because that's kind of just what it was, right? It's just kind of mid. I wouldn't classify this as like the best PLE that we've seen this year. I wouldn't classify this as the worst. I'm just gonna classify it as mid because I think that's just frankly what it was. And I also want to classify the War Games concept as a whole for Survivor Series. That whole thing, it's been so just played out at this point, man. Like, the initial War Games match that we had here, the women's War Games match, just to get into it a little bit here, after that match was over, I kind of felt and thought to myself, I said, this really didn't constitute a War Game stipulation because as a whole, the concept is just outdated. And really that even comes down to the 5-on-5 traditional tag team thing and Survivor Series as a whole. I think it's just for lack of a better term, I think it's a Vince McMahon creation that frankly doesn't really work in 2025. That may be a hot take. I don't really know if it is. I don't think it is either. I think Survivor Series has kind of lost its edge, for a long time, honestly. It's been a while since Survivor Series felt actually legitimately like a Big Four PLE. Speaking of Big Four, we only had 4 matches here for this Survivor Series War Games card, so I might as well get into this. Like I mentioned before, we had the women's War Games match, consisting of Becky Lynch and AJ Lee. Again, like I mentioned before, this match, it wasn't bad. You could have done this match a traditional 5-on-5 tag team match. Of course, there was spots here and there which I think everybody enjoys, like the Io Sky obligatory moonsault or senton, whatever it was from the top of the steel cage. That was fun. Again, you have Becky Lynch out there doing her classic heel shtick. She's trying to escape from the cage, but she gets caught. She gets riptide. She gets into the Black Widow. She taps out immediately. Again, like I felt after this match, I said this match was fine. Didn't really constitute a War Game stipulation. I don't think so. I think it's just again one of those things where it's November. I would assume them as the creative team kind of figures it's November, we have to have War Games, which again kind of runs the concept of being potentially like Hell in a Cell was so many years ago, where it's October, we have to run a Hell in a Cell match just because it's October and it's the pay-per-view and we have to do it. No further reasons as to why, but it's just because we have to do it. Like, again, not saying this was a bad match, but definitely probably wasn't the strongest women's War Games that I've seen. Next, we move on to John Cena against Dominic Mysterio for the Intercontinental Championship. This is John Cena's final ever PLE match, his final appearance on a pay-per-view. I think they touted it. This was his 178th match or 77th, whatever it was, on a pay-per-view. And I have kind of mixed opinions on this as well because the match itself, we really didn't get to see much of a match. It was more of spots and angles and interferences, and the whole match itself was overbooked as hell. That's just what I'm gonna say. Overbooked as hell can either work or it doesn't. Here, I'm still kind of indifferent as to what I feel for this match because, they ran the angle here early on where Dominic goes for a Hurricane Rana, much like Penta this past week on Raw, and they ran the angle of Dominic potentially being hurt, but it's a ruse, and we have Roxanne and Raquel deliver their finishes on John Cena. Then eventually you have Judgment Day come out there. Dominic gets aided by JD McDonough and Finn Balor, and that's not enough. Cena AAs both of them. And then you hear Liv Morgan's music, and then Liv Morgan comes in, gets in between Cena and Dom, slaps Dom with a slap that, quite frankly, didn't really connect. And then, motions at Cena, gets on top of Cena, pause, and then hugs him, and then does the whole, Cena cutthroat thing that he did at the Elimination Chamber and low blows him, and then Dominic gets the win after a 619 and a frog splash. So Dominic is the Intercontinental Champion. Again, going into this match, I did have my thoughts as far as I did think Cena was going to lose the championship here. And I wanted Cena to lose the championship here, because him carrying that championship into his final match at Saturday night's main event against Gunther, which we all know it's going to be, like, it doesn't really, like, Gunther, that match doesn't really require the championship. You shouldn't really have the championship going into that match. So I was perfectly fine with Dominic getting the win over John Cena, right? It's going to, give him more credibility as far as he beat a major star. But at a certain point also, like, there's so much interference here. There was 6 people I would assume get involved in this match. I think sometimes less is more in this kind of scenario. I think had you just had Liv come out there and do what she did, I think it would have been fine. And also, like I mentioned before, as a means to an end as far as getting the championship off of Cena, I think it's fine. But as a last pay-per-view match ever for John Cena, I don't really think this hit the mark. And I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't really think this hit the mark as far as this being the last ever pay-per-view match for John Cena. I think if it was up to me, let's have either Dom and Cena deliver a classic match. I just felt like this match was a little bit too much overbooked, and I think that's kind of what suffered from it. But as far as that goes, we have Liv Morgan back. She is officially back. They mentioned how her recovery was slated to be early 2026, but due to, recovery and rehab and whatnot, she is able to be back a little bit sooner, a little bit earlier. So obviously it's great to see Liv Morgan back once again. They ran the angle of potentially her turning on Dom, which I knew was kind of bullshit, because in storyline purpose, there really is no reason for that to even happen yet. Eventually it will, I would assume, but not thus far. Next, we had Stephanie Vaquer against Nikki Bella for the Women's Championship. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, I did not like this match at all. This match, I was really considering after the match was over. I said, out loud, I said, this match could have easily just been on Raw. Like, this match, pay-per-view match, doesn't deserve to be on this pay-per-view card, because it literally just added nothing to this entire card. Like, I'm not going to remember this match at all. And again, like I mentioned before, I think it's just these two women. They just don't click. And I think Nikki Bella, her whole heel shtick just really hasn't, been it thus far. And I think Stephanie Vaquer suffers from the lack of, establishment, because the crowd, they like her, but I don't think they really know her as far as, like, they know somebody like a Rhea, somebody like an Io. Like, Rhea and Io feel much more like a world champion than Stephanie does at this point. And lastly, we move on to the men's War Games match. There was much of conflict early on during the day as far as the entrances go, as far as who and what we were going to do with the entrances, as far as, like, who came out first. Also, a side note that I want to mention here, and I actually kind of did like this, so kudos to them. They got rid of the shark cages, and it was just pure entrances, no shark cages, which I think was better, because it's kind of weird seeing 4 guys or 5 guys that aren't supposed to be, like, they're not supposed to be super buddies, and they're stuck in a cage together. Like, it just seems ridiculous. So I did kind of enjoy that. But we did get the men's War Games match. We started off with CM Punk and Braun Breaker. Eventually, we had everybody come down. Jim Uso, Jey Uso, Cody Rhodes, Bronson Reed, etc., etc. And eventually, we get to Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns. They start brawling around ringside. Brock Lesnar delivers an F5 to Roman Reigns outside on the announce table. Eventually, they get back in the ring. It's chaos as always. And then eventually, we see a masked figure, a mystery person appear and deliver a super kick to CM Punk, deliver a curb stomp, and then immediately retreats, escapes the cage, and leaves Braun Breaker to spear CM Punk, giving Braun Breaker and the Vision team the win. And the Vision goes off, celebrates at ringside, and we don't know who this mystery man is or where he went. Although I think it's kind of obvious that it's probably gonna just end up being Austin Theory, because at first when you see this mystery man and you see he's all covered in all black, to me, I legitimately thought it was somebody like a Becky Lynch. I said that person is way too small to be Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins is much of a taller, wider built person. I said that's not Seth. And eventually, you know, it's probably going to end up resulting to be Austin Theory, because Austin Theory, if you remember, was originally slated to be in this War Games match. It was going to be him, I would assume, instead of McIntyre or Lesnar, against the team of Punk. And I think this is kind of their redo as far as adding Austin Theory to the Vision. I think this is going to be a new Vision member, eventually revealed probably this Monday night. And then afterwards, we had a stare down between Roman, Punk, and Cody, in which Roman helps up Punk, you know, grabs him by the arm, thanks him for the match. It looks like he wasn't going to help out Cody. Cody just gets up by himself. They have a little stare down there. Roman leaves off and then tells Cody that this is the last time that they're ever going to team up together, kind of leading you to believe that, you know, we're going to get Roman and Cody at WrestleMania. I mentioned this before as far as, you know, this match, Roman and Cody. I think I'm the only person that just kind of isn't interested in it as far as Roman and Cody this early, because there's, I don't know, man. It just, I feel like this is your big match, and you're kind of just, I feel like you're kind of just pulling out of your ass just to, you know, say that you're making this WrestleMania the biggest ever. Like, it just, I don't think there's a purpose to have this match thus far. I think the better match would either be Roman and Punk or Roman and Braun Breaker for the World Heavyweight Championship. It does kind of add to the whole thing of Roman wanting back his title. But again, I think it's way too premature to have these two guys once again in the same match at WrestleMania nonetheless. And the show just kind of went off and just kind of, you know, left us there high and dry. Again, this War Games, this whole Survivor Series pay-per-view in itself, to me, I'm just going to classify as mid. Because, like I said, it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. Like, it wasn't the top pay-per-view of all time. I felt probably the strongest match of this whole entire card was the men's War Games match. The second strongest, I would probably assume, would be the women's War Games match. But again, that felt heatless as well. It felt like it was just a bunch of women just crammed in together in the same match. And then I'd probably put the Dom and Cena match after that. Again, that kind of suffered as well from overbooking. And last, I would probably put the Stephanie McIntyre and Nikki Bella match at the very end. But again, post your comments down below for War Games, Survivor Series, what you thought of tonight's matches, tonight's show in general. What was your favorite part of tonight's show? Let me know down below. Post your comments as far as everything else goes. And until next time, I will see all of you on the next one.